You've seen episode 1 of part 2, right? I mean, how could you not? It's been 2 years of waiting for this, and boy, did Yellowstone come back swinging. We've only gotten a taste of part 2 so far, but let's just say, things are already scorching. And what better way to crank up the heat than with murder, betrayal, and enough drama to make your head spin? If you're not caught up yet, now's your chance to hit pause because, spoiler alert, major spoilers ahead. So grab your drinks and get cozy because we're diving right back into Yellowstone insanity. The wait is over and the drama's just beginning. 2 years, folks. 2 whole years spent speculating, rewatching, and may we say waiting agonizingly, or for better words, suffering with our own theories. And now we're finally back in the saddle. And what's the first thing Yellowstone does? Serves us hot betrayal and more family chaos than Thanksgiving dinner at the ranch. Literally, the first 5 minutes into the first episode of part 2, we saw the unfortunate, but frankly speaking, the foreseeable demise of the man who made the show, John Dutton. And that is just the beginning of part 2, so what else does Sheridan have up his sleeve? And we know the 2-year-long wait was painful, but come on. If you ask us, the wait between each episode fairly rivals it. Because what's next? How did a man that powerful just go away so easily? And is Yellowstone even Yellowstone without the face of John Dutton? We really want to get inside Sheridan's mind just to see how the threads of it all unfold. But before we go into the craziness that part 2 seems to be promising us, let's see where part 1 left us. Season 5, part 1, A Trip Down Memory Lane. Okay, so we can all agree that part 1 was one wild ride through the Dutton family chaos, just like all the past seasons, right? Betrayals, check. Power plays, double check. Part 1 aired a while ago, so let's go over the main chaos. Remember the hardy, stubborn John Dutton? Of course, the man of the show. Well, as stubborn as he always was, he never traded his boots for a suit, even as the new Montana governor. His eyes were firmly set on one thing, safeguarding the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch, and no one was going to stop him from doing so. No compromises whatsoever. And even if everything else about part 1 is a little hazy, we all know no one could forget the biggest shock. His own son, the family black sheep Jamie Dutton, and his ultimate betrayal. Seeing his own father, his own blood, sit in the governor's seat instead of him didn't sit well with Jamie. So what did he do? Did he have a heart-to-heart with his old man? Nope. The black sheep officially jumped ship. He gave his father the ultimate betrayal. He teamed up with the enemy, Market Equities, and going against the family was something his sister, Beth Dutton, couldn't let slide. So enter Jamie's biggest headache, his sister, Beth. Not only did Jamie miss out on the governor's seat, but now he had to deal with his sister, who was more than ready to dish out some serious revenge. Spoiler, it didn't end well for Jamie. Now, while all this drama was unfolding, Casey Dutton had his own set of problems. He and his wife Monica struggled through the toughest of times after the heartbreaking loss of their child. Suffering such a major loss left their relationship hanging by a thread. But if you've been following Yellowstone as closely as we have, you know that the two of them together are stronger than apart, no matter how bad things get. And of course, there was Market Equities, led by the icy Carolyn Warner, pulling out all the stops to take the Duttons down and snatch up their precious ranch. The Duttons had a fight on their hands, and it was one for the ages. So yes, part 1 was as chaotic as any of Sheridan's pieces. And of course, how could he leave us without a cliffhanger? But that cliffhanger promised an action-packed part 2, and it's finally time. And to be honest, it seems Sheridan didn't forget, because oh boy, the first episode is in and part 2's already taking us on a ride. Season 5, part 2, Desire is All You Need. Now enter the first episode of part 2, Desire is All You Need, and we're excited, but not surprised at the turn of events. Look, if you've been keeping up with the drama, you must have heard all the ruckus behind the scenes between the man of the show, John Dutton, aka Kevin Costner, and the show's creator, Taylor Sheridan. To sum it up, call their relationship a friends to enemies trope. The tensions between the two had fans on the edge of their seats. Kevin Costner left us all in major denial when he came forward and officially bid us all farewell, so we kinda saw that he wouldn't be in the upcoming part or seasons. But the way of his demise did leave fans a little surprised. Kevin Costner, or should we say John Dutton, manned the show for nearly 5 whole seasons. So wait, get ready, because spoiler ahead, a bullet to the head does seem a little surprising given the man's repute. The show made John such a big shot that never said no to a fight, sprawled on the floor of his bathroom. And worst of all, the murder was staged as a suicide. So no signs of forced entry or furniture torn through the house. Just nothing. It looked like John just gave in. But who could have masterminded such a clean hit? Well, on one side, you have Beth ready to hatch it out with Jamie. She's dead set on him being behind it, even with Casey not on board with the thought. And it seems Beth's called her husband to be her support and her personal arsenal for the fight she's surely about to put up. But is Jamie really the culprit? Or are his past acts of betrayal misportraying him in Beth's eyes? Well, honestly, Beth's not too far off the mark with her suspicions. You know Sarah Atwood, right? Of course you do. The fiery corporate shark who also won't let anyone stop her from reaching the top. And you might also remember her as Jamie Dutton's love interest. You get where this is going, right? She's ambitious and she wants a seat at the top, even if that's through Jamie. So, of course, Sarah swoops in to rescue her man. Or at least, that's how she sees it, and takes control of the situation. Yep, she's the one who got the job done, and for obvious reasons too. Without John Dutton in the governor's seat, Jamie goes up the ranks, and with him, so does she. But we're starting to think there's more to the story than this, and knowing Sheridan, he surely has some twists on the way. Wait, how did Sarah Atwood even enter the Dutton family feud? It all happened in Season 1, and don't worry, we got you. Sarah Atwood and Jamie Dutton. True love? Sarah Atwood, played by Dawn Olivieri, entered the scenes in Season 5, Part 1. She's a ruthless lawyer who's always focused on the prize. But here's the twist. Guess who she works for? If you guessed market equities, you're spot on. Being on the side of the corporate giant, Sarah has her eyes on the Yellowstone ranch, and she knows just the way to manipulate her way to it. The Duttons family's troubled child, Jamie, was the perfect in that she needed. Jamie, constantly battling with his place in the family and, well, the shadow of his dad, became the perfect target for her, and she knew exactly how to play for power. And she knew what she was doing because soon they went from professional acquaintances to lovers. Well, more like a toxic, manipulative romance, if you want our 2 cents on it. But Sarah wasn't the only one using the relationship. Jamie saw it as a way to escape John's shadow and make his own path, with his own power. Both of them are just pawns for the other to use. Between the two, there's a twisted mix of lies, manipulation, and a shared thirst for revenge against the Duttons. Yes, even if Jamie himself is one. And Part 2 shows just how out of control their alliance is getting, which you know tends to happen once murder is involved. Did Jamie know the truth behind the Dutton death? Now comes the golden question. Did Jamie really know Sarah's plans all along? If you ask us, the answer is a simple yes. Let's be real, murder isn't exactly child's play, and it's definitely not something done on a whim, even for the man you're sharing a bed with. In Part 2, when Jamie first learns that his father has passed and the cause of death is ruled a 1056, suicide, he's visibly shocked, completely blindsided, almost as if he can't believe it. And honestly, we get it. For a man like John Dutton, suicide feels way out of character. Now, fast forward to when we finally get to see Jamie and Sarah share screen. It seems that's when Jamie starts to piece things together and realizes Sarah is behind it. And yeah, seeing her so ready to celebrate his dad's death was more than a little morbid, even by her standards. And when Sarah saw Jamie shedding tears, it felt almost as if she was kinda offended. That's when she reminds Jamie of their past conversation where he had told her to go forward with it. We know Jamie said they didn't discuss it in detail, but Sarah had a fair point. Was she to talk in detail about how she was going to get John out of the picture to Jamie? And bam! That's when you see him realize how he was the one who gave the green light. It was because of him. So yes, even though he didn't subconsciously at the moment realize the workings of it all, he did know about the plan, and well, for us, that qualifies as him knowing. But before we move on, can we talk about the plot holes for a second? Remember when Sarah discussed logistical solutions with Grant? She seemed opposed to staging the murder as a suicide. But if she was the mastermind, why didn't she clarify that from the start? After all, even she admitted John Dutton was the opposite of a quitter. No one would believe the story of his death. Then there's Jamie's reaction. Why was he so upset when he thought his father had unalived himself because of him, if he planned to remove him from the equation since the beginning? Maybe the reality felt different from what he had imagined, and to be honest, it wouldn't be out of character for him. We're sure even you agree that one of the most complex characters in the series is Jamie Dutton. Sarah Atwood, villain number 1. Throughout the years, it's no secret the Dutton family has had its fair share of rivals, be it scheming politicians, corporate bigwigs, or rival ranchers. It's Sarah Atwood, the resident fixer of market equities, that had the last laugh at John Dutton. So none of the countless enemies we've seen stalking the Duttons over the 5 seasons, but a fiery lawyer with a killer power suit. Don't get us wrong, we still love the storyline, but it's kind of anticlimactic. Look, John Dutton has never been one to back down, so this wasn't the ending we were expecting the patriarch to receive. A man whose death should have been legendary seemingly had his fate sealed by a bullet, and that too was a bullet not from a rivaling cowboy, but a calculated move by Sarah. Maybe Taylor Sheridan took the off-screen tensions a little too personally, but one thing we know for sure is Sheridan knows how to keep us on our toes, even if we're side-eyeing this particular move of his. After all, market equities has been like an annoying mosquito at a summer barbecue, just not leaving us alone. Annoying, but never an ultimate threat. But it seems Sarah's upping the game. But Sarah shouldn't be getting all cozy with her victory just yet. Because here's the thing. If there's anything we've learned about the Duttons, it's that killing the head of the family is like getting a wanted sign stamped onto your forehead. John Dutton's kids, well, his biological ones, love them, hate them, or just wish they go to family therapy, are not the kind to let something like this slide. And while Beth might have her eyes set on Jamie as the killer, once she finds out who actually masterminded the whole thing, well, let's just say Sarah Atwood's days will be numbered. She'll officially become enemy number 1. Now let's talk about the Dutton kids, and to be specific, Beth and Jamie. If you thought their sibling rivalry was messy before, oh, buckle up, because this is about to get downright Shakespearean. All we can think about is thank God Jamie wasn't the one pulling the trigger on dear old dad, because maybe that way he can make it out of this alive. But again, without him, dear old dad would still be living. Beth, of course, is having none of it. She doesn't even know what went down or who's really behind it. She's getting ready to knock over Jamie, and she's already been against the man, so now she'll probably be going at him with reckless abandon. Honestly, Beth's wrath is a spectacle in itself. It's like watching a hurricane that's been waiting 5 seasons to make landfall, and Jamie is standing squarely in its path. Now here's where things get interesting. Jamie might be sharing the same fate as Sarah. Why? We remember hearing about Paramount asking Kelly Riley, the talented actress who plays Beth, to return for future projects. And that's not exactly a comforting sign for Jamie's survival prospects, is it? Also, if we were to bet on who has the higher chance of making it out alive, we're not taking chances with Jamie. Between the 2 siblings, Beth has always been more likely to come out on top. Regardless of Jamie's conniving and backstabbing, he just never quite got the upper hand. Ever. It kind of explains why some viewers even feel bad for him. He's like that kid in school who tries to be cool but ends up landing face first on the ground. And maybe Beth's the one tripping him. Still, knowing Yellowstone is a work of Sheridan, and especially with all the drama that unfolded off screens, we don't know what direction Sheridan will take us in. Will Beth finally get the ultimate revenge, or will Jamie somehow, against all odds, claw his way to the top? It may sound like a long shot, but stranger things have happened in Yellowstone. What's going to happen next? Yellowstone has had us hooked speculating what comes next after each season and episode, and Part 2 is no exception. With each new episode, we can't help but wonder, who's getting the ranch? Who will make it to the end? Are we done after this season, or is there more to come? The questions are endless, and we're desperate for answers. The ranch's future, Tate Dutton or Rip Wheeler? One might think Rip Wheeler, Beth's husband, filling the shoes of John as the last cowboy standing would be a good fit, given that he's the loyal ranch foreman who's been quite the steady figure. But Beth dropped a crucial line that talked of the future of the ranch. If you somehow missed it, toward the end of the first episode of Part 2, Beth mentioned how Tate, John Dutton's grandson, was the beneficiary of the family trust. Now, this was a little dramatic pivot, but thinking in the long run, it makes total sense why John would make Tate the beneficiary. He's literally the future of the ranch and also, till now, the least problematic, given he's still a kid. But wait, he's still a kid, so who'll be taking care of the ranch till the youngest Dutton grows old enough? Tate getting the ranch will be like passing the torch to the next generation, one that isn't as entrenched in the toxic legacy of John Dutton's rule. But it'll be quite some time till we see it happen, or if we see it happen at all. So we guess Tate's a storyline for another time. The bombshell and what's next for Yellowstone. Some fans are even diving into the idea of Beth setting up her own business now that John is gone, the same business she hinted at in Part 1. And with how John sent the cattle to Texas to protect them, it could actually be a clever setup for Beth to step in and expand her into the cattle business. But before fans could continue with their blazing thoughts, Cole Hauser, oh yeah, Rip Wheeler himself, just dropped a bombshell that has us all scrambling. So apparently, all the wild fan theories we've been tormenting over, Hauser says none of them are even close to what's actually going to happen. Yup, you heard that right. In a recent interview, he casually tossed out that everyone's predictions about the finale are way off. And let's just say, that little nugget of info is enough to send fans into a frenzy. Like, if the show has already kept us on the edge of our seats, what kind of chaos is about to unfold in these last episodes? What more twists will Sheridan give us? But here's where it gets even juicier. The secrecy surrounding the finale was a whole new level. Apparently, even the cast wasn't clued in on what was coming because the producers of the show didn't want even a snippet of the finale of Season 5 to sneak out. Even scripts were being redacted like they were government secrets, and Hauser himself admitted that he had no idea where his character was headed until the very last minute. So if you were hoping for all those storylines to wrap up neatly with a bow, brace yourselves. It looks like Yellowstone might be heading for a twist that'll leave us all with our jaws on the floor. Like always. Speaking of interviews, let's talk about Cole Hauser for a minute and then get into the real shocker, Kevin Costner, or should we say, the dead John Dutton. You would think Kevin Costner might be feeling a little nostalgic seeing Part 2 come on air without him, right? Well, it seems like it's the opposite. Kevin Costner is too busy to care. So while the rest of us were counting down the days to the long-awaited Part 2, Costner didn't even have a single clue when the first episode was airing. In a candid moment on SiriusXM's The Michael Smerconish program, Costner got real and said how he didn't even know the show was airing this November. And turns out he even saw a few ads with his face on them for Part 2. Yikes! But it seems Costner's moved past the rocky days at Yellowstone and he's thriving in his own lane. The Sheridan Universe, Yellowstone spin-offs. There's even talk in the air of how Sheridan might be on the verge of taking control of a whole new empire. It's like the end of Yellowstone could actually be the start of something even bigger for him. Look, the guy's been busy building this massive universe around the Duttons for years, and we're all just living in it. Sure, Beth might be gearing up to take over, but what about the Clyburns? They're out there, lurking, and we still don't know what the deal is with them. And if you haven't heard of the Clyburns, then here's a quick catch-up. The Madison is an upcoming Yellowstone spin-off starring none other than the iconic Michelle Pfeiffer. Yes, Michelle Pfeiffer! The story follows the uber-rich Clyburn family who swapped their posh New York lifestyle for the rugged beauty of Montana after a tragic loss. Sounds juicy, right? Knowing the roots of the show are in Yellowstone, there's for sure going to be dramatic betrayals and family secrets, and we're so ready! And the million-dollar question, how does the Madison connect to the rest of the Yellowstone universe? The Clyburns may be new on the block, but let's not pretend Sheridan isn't cooking up some wild crossover. Can you imagine Beth Dutton clashing with the Clyburn matriarch? Sparks would fly, and honestly, we'd love to see it. No one can deny Sheridan outdoes himself with every new spin-off. Just look at the success of 1883 and 1923. And keep in mind that these series took off while Yellowstone was still airing. The Madison does seem to differ from his normal trajectory, because his previous spin-offs have centered solely around the Duttons. Like 1883 was basically heartbreak wrapped in grit. Sheridan took us on a journey to the origins of the Dutton dynasty, and we'd be lying if we said we didn't let a few tears loose here and there. And then there's 1923, filled with Dutton family drama and hard decisions. Every episode kind of felt like a history lesson wrapped in tension. With the Madison now on the scene, Sheridan has more than a few cards left to play. There are whispers about how the Madison might take the Yellowstone universe in a new direction. After all, it is bringing in fresh faces and new conflicts, potentially changing the game for good. But will it be able to meet the high standards Yellowstone has set? Sheridan has made his own universe, everything is connected, but there is one more spin-off fans are whispering about, Beth and Rips. Could it be that the two get their own spin-off? Because at this point, the two are carrying Yellowstone, so why not have their own show? But Kohlhauser once again came crashing fans' dreams and said how the two are currently busy with other projects. But folks, if you ask us, that's not really a no. And let's be real, Sheridan loves keeping secrets, so we're not taking a Beth and Rip spin-off off the table just yet. Especially keeping in mind how much Taylor Sheridan loves working on spin-offs. Saddle up for one last ride. We're not entirely sure if this is the last of Yellowstone that we'll see, but it sure feels like it. The excitement, the speculations, and the sheer drama are at an all-time high. Will Rip and Beth ride off into the sunset or into more chaos? Can Casey and Monica finally find peace? And will John Dutton's iron-fisted rule over the ranch leave behind a legacy or just a trail of dust? And can Jamie ever redeem himself in the eyes of what family he has left? No matter how it ends, one thing is certain, the journey has been a wild ride. From fistfights to betrayals to those jaw-dropping plot twists, Yellowstone has given us everything we didn't know we needed in a modern Western. Now, we're at the edge of our seats, waiting to see how this wild ride is going to end, or should we say continue? So there you have it, folks. Now that you're all caught up, comment down below what you think is going to happen. Oh, and make sure to subscribe for more updates and news on your favorite shows.